Hi there. Welcome to Bible Slash Chat. Kevin, hi.
Hello.
So it wasn't going to be awkward until right before I pushed record.
I started a sentence.
What were you going to ask?
What we were going to talk about.
There you go. See, this is great. Yeah. So
what's new?
Yeah. No, we were just discussing that Jesus, that conversation between Jesus and the Sadducees, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Where Jesus, they come to him and they're like, "Hey, here's a question for you that no one can solve," and they're trying their very best, and Jesus' answer is,
well, I mean, basically what he does is he realizes if he just takes the Bible and shows them that the tangled mess is in their minds.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not, if you know the Bible, it's really simple.
Exactly.
But they bring a question, they're like, "Oh, we got the zinger here."
Yeah.
And then they realize they're the ones who are completely ignorant of the Bible.
Yeah, totally.
So,
yeah, which I'm actually quoting 2 Peter 1:3, right? That God has given us all things that pertain to life and godliness. Just for the sermon this week, because we're covering a topic that isn't necessarily like a theological topic, and yet everything ultimately relates to that. So, yeah.
That's good.
Anyway, so
this is like a 2-for-1.
What are we talking about?
That was the first one?
That's all just free intro.
Yeah. My daughter's crawling. Let's just...
Good.
Yeah.
Is she really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like 2 days ago.
Oh,
so
that's so fun.
And she's, making her way, crawling towards college. She'll be there before you know it.
That was the worst segue I've ever heard.
I feel like I threw up in my mouth a little bit.
Just kidding.
So, hey, let's talk about college group.
Yes, very good. Yes. Okay, so why do we do college group, right? That's Kevin, that's awesome. Yeah.
This
okay.
isn't stiff at all.
This isn't stiff at all. Okay, so college group. What are we doing in college group?
Okay, so we did youth group,
Yeah.
right? So the whys of youth ministry. Of course, when students leave youth ministry or they just come in there a little bit older, we have a college ministry.
Yeah,
Why?
young adults. We call it young adults ministry,
Okay,
not necessarily college ministry.
Right. Good distinction.
Yeah.
Why is that?
College. So the distinction exists because a lot of them are in college, but they're they're in their 20s, mid 20s, up to 30, early 30s, and not married, and so it's just another place where they can fellowship and do those same things. And so the why of this young adults group is really the exact same why as youth group. Everything we discussed in youth group, that whole conversation is actually, in one sense, the exact same components. We do almost the exact same things. We don't play kickball because, honestly, just not the best venue for kickball. And
because they kick the ball too far.
Yeah, exactly. It stops being fun when you get out of junior high. And then so that's number one. And then the second thing, the second thing, we just have fellowship time at the beginning. But in the same way, just allowing people to interact and talk with each other.
Yeah.
Leaders are a little more observant. Making sure that people who are new are being able to be talked to. Those kinds of things. We have a few songs of worship. Chris Conair, if you're watching, Chris, this is a shout out.
Shout out to Chris.
He leads the worship. He and Pierce lead worship,
nice.
And we sing 3 hymns usually. And then we do teaching time. So right now we're teaching through the book of Ephesians.
Sweet.
It's less like overtly didactic. We're just one person speaking. It's more interactive, a little more inductive, where we're walking through some of the ideas of the text. We take smaller chunks, so we're not doing big chunks of Mark or big chunks of Ephesians. Tonight we're going to cover 2 verses. Several times we've covered 1 verse, or even just like a portion of a verse. So we're a little slower. Again, knowing that we have time, there's no time limit. Where care groups have a time, but
college students stay up late.
They do.
Young adults stay up late.
Young adults stay up late. So yeah, and so that's kind of the the components. And then we do the same thing: break up into small groups by gender, and then just share and pray for each other. Nice. So
question. So why then do you structure the teaching time the way you do, more inductively with more back and forth participation?
Yeah. So in one sense, so for it's still I'm still teaching it, but because it's a group and because of the nature of the group, there is a change in the nature of the group.
Yeah,
so in youth group, most of the kids are there effectively because their parents attend the church. So we hope and pray that their hearts want to be there, and I think a lot of them do. But they're there essentially as a captive audience. So just opening the floor for discussion is usually less helpful, right? Where a young adults group, they're at an age where they're usually living on their own, or maybe and are usually employed. They could be living on their own if they're not, and so there's a lot more flexibility and freedom. And yet they're still coming out on a Friday night to hear the Word of God. So I'm guessing they're usually either believers or seeking the truth of God. And so that allows for a little more openness, and we have more of an inductive sort of discussion-based conversation. But still with the main goal to get somewhere. But ultimately, it's like there's a lot more flexibility in the way that.
Do you feel happens. Like they are asking more of those like deeper questions of the text?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think like, I think the issues that young adults face are more complex than the issues that high school kids face, obviously. And so those issues bring questions to mind, and those questions, we're trying to answer some of those questions. They're a little more complex, maybe a little more difficult to sort of navigate through than what a high schooler might be facing. So it's just like, just because of life stage, they're just a little bit ahead in life stage, and so a little heavier questions to ask and get answered. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, so they're thinking very deeply. I mean, it's a super neat group. They're great. The group is awesome. We're super thankful for them. So so that's the reason why we do that, and that actually like. That idea, that mold, is essentially the exact same mold that we use in every single venue. Yeah. All the time. We have the exact same venue, the exact same mold. Care groups, youth group, young adults group. Even in one sense, like the Sunday service is actually the exact same thing. That mold exists in the same way. So those components, we want prayer, music, the Word of God, and fellowship. Yep. And all we're doing is repackaging that. It's like exactly. It's like the ultimate regifting scheme, right? It's like keep wrapping it in different wrapping paper, but we're always doing the same thing. And the reason for that is because those are the means of grace, right? And those are the means by which God has designed the church to function. And as leaders of the church, our responsibility is to equip the saints, right? Ephesians chapter 4, to equip the saints for the work of service. And that work of ministry, that work of service, is the mutual proclamation of gospel truth to one another. And that mutual proclamation of gospel truth to one another, it builds each other up, and it encourages one another, and causes us to pursue godliness and holiness together as a church family. And we were just talking about this, but Romans chapter 15, verse 14, Paul says, "Concerning you, my brethren, I myself also am convinced that you yourselves are full of goodness, filled with all knowledge, and able to admonish one another." So you have Paul saying, look, I know you guys know these gospel truths that I've just given you, the book of Romans. Knowing these things, I know you can care for each other. And so our job as leaders is to just continually communicate those things so that the people of the church are equipped to then do that with one another. Yeah. So all these venues function the same way, actually, and then we're just doing the exact same thing over and over again. Yeah.
So it's that church focus, right, of just anything that a church is supposed to do. So I think it might be easy to misunderstand the structure to say, oh, if this is young adults group, therefore I go here, and maybe I don't have as much of an open door to participate in other things.
Oh, so for sure.
How would you counsel someone on that?
Yeah, so all these things are functional ways to get people plugged into the body, right, ultimately. Because we know that no one of us is able to do all the work of ministry, right? No one of us is able to actually
John Buck?
Yeah, and that's why I'm bald.
You can do a lot.
No, not really.
You and Jason.
So we need the body. So we need the body to come around and care for itself, right? We are individually members one of another, Paul says in Romans chapter 12. And so that individual unity that we have with one another is the means by which we're caring for one another. And so a person who says, well, I go over here to this group, we would say, hey, that's great. That's a good starting point. Now come and join the church. Be a member. Be a participating member as you admonish others in the church and grow in your knowledge and grow in your ability to minister to other members of the body.
So in the same way, you can go to equipping class and care group.
Yeah, exactly.
You can go to college group and equipping class.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can do young adults group and equipping class. You can do young adults group and care group. Yeah. Right? And those things are great. Yeah. And we would say, hey, that's fantastic. Totally. Those are slightly different formats, slightly different ways of looking at it, but really the same thing, just packaged slightly differently. And it's always going to be the same thing. That's the reality of it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I think when I was, in college especially, but those venues were really helpful. Yeah, and so I think the fact that we do that can be a blessing.
Yeah, and I think like young adults, it just provides a cool way for them to hang out and still do the same thing that's happening in the church, but just do it in a situation, in a setting that's just more comfortable for them, easier. it's fun.
Yeah,
and they
it's
really
a lot of
enjoy
fun.
it. So yeah.
Cool.
Anyway, well, I hope that's helpful for you. That's why we do young adults group in our church, and if you have any, and really why we do everything in our church, which is helpful, hopefully.
Yeah.
If you have any questions on any of this, feel free to reach out to us at info@faithbibleoc.org. Thanks so much.